Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining on this Tuesday afternoon. So let's just wait a few minutes, just 1 or 2 minutes, and allow others to join so that we can start this webinar. Thank you. Hi all, we're just waiting for a few more people to join in. So we'll just wait another minute or so. I can see people trickling in. Post-lunch webinars always take a time to get attendees on board. So we'll just give a few more minutes. Okay, in the interest of time, I think let's start. So, hi everyone, I'm Vaishali. I'm a part of FutureSkills team. I handle partner engagements for FutureSkills. And FutureSkills is really the training or the skilling arm of Nasscom. This webinar that we have today is in partnership with Intellipaat. Intellipaat is a part of the FutureSkill partner. And this in this webinar, we will cover step-by-step roadmap on how to become a successful full stack developer. One can see a lot of open positions for full stack developer, and the industry is really abuzz with this in-demand position. In fact, in response to the pandemic, a lot of companies across different industries have migrated their business to virtual world, leading to an increased demand for full stack developers with knowledge of both front end and back end. Those who can quickly develop and deliver software projects through full stack methods are much in demand. This webinar will cover all that you want to know about full stack development, the requirements, learning path, skills needed, and our speaker Ashish is really himself a seasoned full stack developer with expertise in various technologies like AngularJS, NodeJS, and a lot more. He has a passion of teaching and freelances in his time to train people on full stack technologies with Intellipaat. So without taking any more time, I will hand it over to Ashish to share to go through his entire webinar about what this full stack development is. So Ashish, all yours. I hope this 1 hour is fruitful for all of you who've taken time from your busy schedule. Thank you so much.
Hey, thanks, Vaishali. Thanks for the introduction. Yeah, so as Vaishali already pointed out, right? So we'll be going through full stack developers guide as part of this presentation. And like, if anyone has any question, please use the question section to drop your questions, and we'll take 2 pauses throughout the session to answer those questions, right? So let's get started. To start with, as far as the agenda is concerned, like we'll be covering the following topics for this session. So firstly, we'll start with what full stack development is all about, right? We'll take a look at why full stack development is important and what sort of future prospect does it has to offer when you pursue a role as a full stack developer. We'll take a look at few numbers and statistic in terms of what is the sort of average or average salaries that you can expect if you become a full stack developer. And also we look at quite a few companies who are actively looking for developers with a full stack development profile, right? Uh, like once we are done with this, we'll take a deeper look into what are the components that come together to actually build a full stack development lifecycle, and we also take a deeper look into what are the sort of approach that you can take in order to become a full stack developer, right? So let's take a look at what is full stack development all about. So when you talk about any given application or a web application, it basically consists of two aspects, right? So there is a front end aspect and there is a back end aspect of it. So a developer who is able to efficiently work on the complete stack end to end, which is both the client side application and the server side, is basically a full stack developer, right? Now, when we talk about the front end or the client side part of the application, it's basically the user interface which the client interacts with, right? It's basically the face of application, and this user interface actually is dependent upon the backend services to provide the right data points so that it can deliver the functionality or the product that it's supposed to. Okay, so in a nutshell, full stack development is basically a process using which someone can work efficiently across both the front end and the back end of a particular web application. Okay, now let's take a look at why is full stack development important, right? And to do that, we'll take a look at few statistics. So according to United States Bureau of Labor Statistics, we expect to see the availability of jobs in full stack development to go up to 850,000 by 2024, right? And this is more than six folds when compared to what we see today, right? And even in terms of pay scale, due to large demand but low supply of full stack developers, we expect to see a pay scale increase of a whopping 4.7% by again 2024, right? So in order to understand why full stack development is important, let's take a look at the advantages that it has to offer, due to which we would see these numbers growing, right? So first of all, the cost effectiveness, right? So in terms of let's take an example, like if you want to develop a particular application or a product, right? As we already saw earlier, any given application consists of few components like the front end, the back end, and databases, right? So even if you want to start with a very small project, if you want to hire people having expertise in these specific area, you would end up hiring people having expertise in all these area, even to start with a very small project, right? But if you are a developer with a full stack development background, it means that you can understand a particular product right from the front end to the back end, which basically means companies have to hire less number of employees in order to at least get started with a particular product or an application, right? So cost effectiveness is one. Now, next up is easy maintenance. Now, this again touches upon the fact that we just talked about, that given a full stack developer has an idea about the whole end to end of how the data is flowing and how the application comes together, the team size that requires to get started or work on an application is comparatively small, which reduces the amount of communication that needs to happen, or the effort that needs to be put into in terms of managing a particular project, right? So basically, for developers with full stack background, teams are more maintainable and scalable going forward. Similarly, transferable skills, right? So if you are a full stack developer, it's easy for you to coach people in different area of a development life cycle, be it the front end or the back end, and you can point people out in the right direction so as to they can improve upon their skills and quickly get onboarded in your team and work through, right? So that's a very important aspect. Finally, rapid development. Now, since we have smaller team sizes, and since developers having full stack development can connect the dots easily right from right across different stack of the development environment, it's easy for them to comprehend what the actual requirement is, or what uh, is the product looking for, right? And since the team sizes are smaller, it's easier to communicate and understand the requirements, leading to faster development and timely delivery, right? Apart from these, like if you have a full stack development background, full stack developers make great dev leads or team leads going forward, because the very reason that since you are able to manage things right from top to bottom, you are able to concise things better. You are able to make better architecture or design decisions right at an early stage of development, leading to a timely delivery, right? Also, when that combined with domain knowledge, it's a great combination of having good managers, right? So let's take a look at the average salary that one can expect if they pursue a role as a full stack developer, right? So according to the statistics that we see approximately $92,000 for the US market, 8.25 lakhs per annum in India market, and close to 42 pounds in the UK, right? So these are the sort of basic salaries that you can expect if you pursue a career in a full stack as a full stack developer. Now, let's take a look at different companies that are hiring with a full stack, that are interested in hiring full stack developers. So you see the following slide actually represent a lot of brands that are, or companies that are actively looking for full stack developers. So if any of these companies are something that you want to be associated with, it's definitely a thing that you can take forward. Okay, now let's take a deeper dive into the sort of components that a full stack development is all about, right? So as we touched upon earlier, any given application has three major components for a full stack development, right? The very first one is the front end. So what exactly is the front end, right? So front end is basically the face of the application, which is used, which is basically with which the client interacts with, right? So when you load a particular application on your browser, the screen that you see in front of you as a client is basically the front end of the application. It's what the client uses to go through the entire user experience, right? Going forward, the front end basically relies upon a backend set of backend services, which actually gives out appropriate data sets, which the front end can then use to deliver all the functionality that is expected out of it, right? So the backend is basically a middle layer or a service layer, which basically has the entire business logic, which is responsible for manipulating the data and fitting it into the right format or the way the front end is expecting. Yeah, so all the business core business logic is something that sits in the backend, which is the middle service layer, right? And finally, the data that we're talking about, all the applications need to have a sort of persistent data store, which can be used to basically store data points, which can then be uh, uh, that which can then be read in the future so as to cater to their clients, right? So basically, there are three main components involved. There is a front end, which is the face of the application. There's this back end, which is the service layer, which has the entire business logic. And finally, we have the databases, which is the persistent data store, which provides all the data set required for the application to work end to end, right? I'll take a pause if there are any questions. Hemant, do we have any questions?
Not yet, Ashish. But guys, if you have any questions, please ask us in the question box, and we'll be happy to answer all your queries. We can go ahead, Ashish.
Okay, cool, fine. So let's take a deeper dive into each of these components, and while doing so, we'll also talk about different technologies or the areas that you can focus upon to start your journey to become a full stack developer. Okay, front end. So as we already touched upon, front end is basically the user interface used to which the client interacts with, right? Now there are front end allows the client side is the basically the client side part of the web application with which the user interacts. It mainly consists of three technologies, namely HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, right? So let's try and discuss each of these technologies and to see what each of these has to offer and how do we use it when we are building a new web application, right? So what is HTML? HTML is basically a hypertext markup language. It is used to define the structure of a particular web application. Now, so now when we talk about a structure of a web application, what do we mean about it, right? So whenever you go to a web application, the page can be divided into different components like the header, the footer, the main body. There is a menu and different tabs using which you can navigate to different pages of a particular web application, right? You'll see forms and buttons and so on and so forth. So all of these are different components or different elements that come together to make a web page, right? So HTML is basically a markup language using which you can give a structure to your page, right? Now, once you have the structure in place, CSS comes into picture, wherein CSS is something that allows you to add styling to your page, okay? CSS stands for cascading style sheets, and CSS is used to add or define style to the structure that you just created using HTML. Okay, so CSS has a lot of things to offer in terms of you can apply themes to your website, the look and feel, to make it more feature rich and accessible and adding up to the user experience when the client uses your application, right? So HTML basically defines the structure, and wherein CSS is used to apply styling to that particular structure. Okay, finally we have JavaScript. So JavaScript is used to add interactivity and asynchronous communication to your web application. JavaScript is a scripting language that basically runs in your browser. Now, what do I mean by adding interactivity and asynchronous communication? So we talked about structure and style and styling of a particular page, right? But let's say if you are on a page which has a button and a form, so what happens when the client clicks the button, right? How do you what logic executes when the button is clicked, right? So that's where JavaScript comes into picture, right? So whenever a certain event is raised, for example, button clicks or a form is submitted, JavaScript comes into picture to handle these data sets, analyze it, and push it to the backend so that backend services can then take it over and process it accordingly, right? So let's say if you are on a registration page, right, and you fill up the entire form and then finally hit the submit button, that's when a specific node of JavaScript would be called, which will then go ahead and read through the registration form. It will capture all the data points. It will validate to see the authenticity of the data points, and it will make a backend call so that those data points are pushed to the backend services, and the backend services can then analyze it, parse it, and save it accordingly into the database, right? So JavaScript is basically a scripting language that adds interactivity to your application. Okay, so we just spoke about HTML, which provides the structure, CSS, which provides styling, and JavaScript, which basically helps you build the feature and make everything come together, right? These three are basically the pillars of building a good UI application, right? So whenever you start with a front-end development, these three are absolutely must. You need to invest some time learning about HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Make sure that the basics are right so that you can use that to build on top of it. Finally, once you have gained appropriate knowledge about these key three technologies, we can start talking about different front-end frameworks. So what are front-end frameworks? Front-end frameworks are basically these libraries of code that take care of a lot of commonly built features. Okay, so these are basically libraries, very feature-rich libraries that solve most of the common concerns that are absolutely required to build a front-end application. Now, to name a few of these famous frameworks, Angular, React, and Vue, right? Angular is all of these three are very common front-end development frameworks, and these are basically built upon JavaScript, HTML, and CSS to provide a very feature-rich library for application development. Now, just to give you an example of what these feature sets are, if you talk about Angular, right? So for any given application to function, for example, in the registration example that we just saw, when you fill out the registration form and hit submit button, the data needs to be sent back to the service, right? In order for that to happen, you need to write some sort of a logic using which you can make that server call so that the data is pushed to the backend. Now, if you talk about Angular, Angular already has a built-in service called a HTTP client service, which you can use out of the box to either post some data on the backend or receive some data from the backend, right? So all of these things are already built into these frameworks with a defined architecture so that you can directly use them and focus more upon the business logic or the product that you're building rather than spending time on the intricate details or technicalities of building a particular uh, feature. Okay, so now let's take a look at each of these. Let's just introduce ourselves with each of these framework. Now, Angular is a front-end JavaScript framework created by Google. It has a nice a component-based architecture which you can leverage from, and a very feature set of services modules that you can use to quickly swap up a front-end application. React is another such framework which was built by Facebook. It mainly deals with efficiently rendering component. It also somewhat has a component hierarchy-based architecture which specializes in rendering components. Next up is Vue.js. Vue.js is something that was created by Eva and Yu. It's sort of very similar to Angular, but it's very lightweight and easier to start with when you compare it with Angular. Now, just to note, like in order for you to be a front-end developer, you don't have to pursue each of these frameworks, right? I think you need to start off with focusing with the three pillars that we spoke about, which is HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And once you are acquainted with those, you can start off with small projects with one of these frameworks to see what are the features that these has to offer and how can you make the most of it in the context that you are working. Now, let's talk about backend for a bit, right? Now, as we talked about frontend, there are several technologies that are available for you to work on the backend. Now, backend, also known as server side, is the part of the web application that deals with data and relationship, right? So all the business logic or data manipulation happens on the backend server. Now, these are a few technologies that can be used to build a backend services like PHP, Python, Ruby, NodeJS, and Java, right? So PHP is a popular server-side scripting language. It stands for PHP Hypertext Preprocess. It's free and easy to use, and it's widely used for web development today, right? Now, next up is Python. Python is also a very versatile language. It finds application to a lot of other areas, even apart from web development. It's nothing specific to web development, but yeah, Python is a very powerful interpreted language that you can use for scripting and also server-side implementation. Next up is and yeah, we have some frameworks in Python as well, like Django and Flask, etc. Next up is Ruby. Now, Ruby is an extremely easy language to pick up. It basically focuses on simplicity and productivity. It has a very elegant set of syntax that you can use to write very readable and maintainable code bases. Now, there are frameworks that you can utilize if you want to, if you choose Ruby, if you want to learn Ruby, which is Ruby on Rails or Sinatra, etc. Right. Next up is Node.js. Now, we already spoke about JavaScript, which and how it adds interactivity to your front-end application. So Node.js is something which allows JavaScript to be executed on the backend services, right? So Node.js is basically a C++ runtime, which enables us to execute JavaScript logic on the backend services, on the backend. Now, there are different frameworks like express.js, which can then be used to build a very feature set API services like on REST paradigm and so on and so forth to build a full-fledged backend services. Finally, we have Java. Java is another very famous language which is mainly used by enterprise application developers. Now, Java is more of an object-oriented and class-based library which is used for enterprise application. You get to learn a lot about object-oriented programming and concepts and principle, which basically helps you design your code better in a maintainable and a scalable fashion. So you can pick up any one of these technologies to at least start working on your journey as a backend developer. But to start with, whenever you want to. Finally, we have databases. So we talked about the front end, which is the face of the application. We spoke about the back end, which is basically which manipulates or maintain or has all the business logic in with all the data that it's getting. But from where is that data coming from? So databases is what we use to store all these data points. So every application actually requires a persistent store wherein they can store data and retrieve that for manipulation at a later instant, right? So that's where database comes into picture. Now we have basically two types of databases, which is SQL and NoSQL. SQL is basically structured query language. SQL is more of used to maintain relational database management systems, wherein data is stored in more of a table-like format comprising of rows and columns, right? SQL has a lot of feature set APIs like it enables you to create new data sets, delete new data sets, update them, alter them, and read them accordingly, right? And coming to NoSQL, NoSQL is basically are used to store data that are more difficult to model in the relational scheme of things, which is in tables and rows. NoSQL is basically they use these different links, graphs, or documents to store data and connections between them. One such example would be to store data in a form of a JSON format, right? So that's something where NoSQL comes into picture. Yeah, so now we talked about front end, we talked about back end and databases. We also talked about quite a few technologies and frameworks that you can actually start with uh, to lead you towards your journey to become a full stack developer. Now, let's just go through a few key points that we already covered to sort of take you through the path that you need to or the choices that you need to make in order to execute this properly. Okay, so now before you start actually diving into these technologies and start programming, I think you need to first focus upon the basics, right? Which is the basic programming concept, data structures or algorithms or hoops fundamental, which is object-oriented paradigm fundamentals. You need to first focus upon those aspects of programming so that in a given use case, if you are solving a problem or if you are building a product, you know what sort of algorithm would be best for that particular problem to solve, or what sort of data structure to use to save a certain data set, right? So focusing on the basic programming requirements is the first thing that you should be doing. Once you have that, you can start exploring more of the front-end technologies, which is HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. These are the three building blocks which you cannot avoid. So you have just to start learning the basic principles of how do you structure your page, how you learn concepts of CSS like classes, attributes, semantics, specificity, all of those to uh, to be in a position where you can create a rough structured page, add some styles to it, and then apply JavaScript to those pages to make it interactable and feature rich, right? Once you know these three aspects, you can actually pick up small projects wherein you can try one of these frameworks like Angular or React to build those projects and see what sort of features these frameworks has to offer and how you can make best use of it in your use case, your specific use cases, right? Now, when you start doing these small projects, definitely UI is not sufficient. You would need some sort of a service layer from which you can query data or save data at in your application, right? So that's when backend would come into picture. You can choose any of the technologies that we spoke about today, or few or any other technologies that you want to explore, and start creating small server-side applications or exposing APIs to return static data or to start with, returning static data to start with, and you can integrate those with your front-end application to see how the data is flowing from front-end to back-end, right? Once that is done, you can uh, try to start exploring databases. To start with, SQL is something that you should start with to learn how to save data, how to manage your databases, how to uh, classify your data sets, entities, so that they are scalable and maintainable in the longer run. And then you can integrate that with your backend API to see how the data is flowing end to end in a secure and a scalable fashion, right? Once you have a good amount of experience with all these, you should definitely pursue getting a certification of those, because that adds your credibility to your profile, and then you can start applying to your jobs to see what sort of opportunities there are and delivering project and experiences, right? So any questions, Hemant, do we have any questions? Or I would like to take a pause, I think.
Yes,
Hey, Hemant, you there?
all right, sorry for that. So I was saying, yes, let's take a pause. So guys, it'll be great if you have some questions, because I mean, Ashish is here with us. He can answer all your questions on the go. So if you have any questions, it'll be great. Ashish, one question that I had from the webinar was,
Yeah.
like, if I have to start my journey from scratch, right? So where should
Mhm.
I actually start from? I don't know databases. I'm not from a background where I know HTML, CSS. So where should I actually start from?
Yeah, sure. So you can first of all start. So as I
Ashish,
said, right?
I think your voice.
Is it audible now?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, Hemant. So I think the first thing to go is to concentrate upon is the basic programming principles, right? So concepts like you can search about how to start programming. That will introduce you to the concepts like data structures and algorithms and all of that. Now you don't have to necessarily start with databases. I think that would not be the right thing to do, because it's difficult to envision something. But if you start with HTML, you can just take a look at any web application or any page. It will sort of you can relate with it, because you can see how things like the moment you start writing HTML, you can see how it translates on a particular web page. That sort of brings more interest to you. Sort of you can start learning with HTML and CSS skills. And as I said, once you are good with HTML, CSS, you can start adding more features and then slowly transition towards JavaScript, then backend and databases to start with, right? And
Okay.
yeah, I think yeah,
Yeah. At what point will I be able to apply for jobs? Let's say I'm looking for a salary bracket between 8 to 12 LPA. Okay. So
mhm.
at what point and what skill sets will require me to, start applying for jobs?
Yeah. So I think the part where I mentioned to try out small projects, right? So once you start creating small projects, and once you are able to connect the dots of how things are happening right from the UI layer up to the database, how the data is being stored, how is the backend able to retrieve it and manipulate it and crunch it and then send it to the UX. I think once you're able to connect all these three dots as a full stack developer, I think that's the right point to start looking for jobs. And yeah, also I would stress upon getting yourself certified, because when you just learn things by yourself, you might feel that yes, you are able to do it now, but getting a certification would definitely add up to the credibility, and you would have better chances of getting landing a good job.
Okay. So you also mentioned about data structures. So how important are data structures, when we are applying for, let's say, the job the salary bracket that basically we just mentioned.
So, I mean, on the very first day, like it depends upon for the sort of company that you're working on. So if you're more inclined toward product-based companies wherein you're building new products versus if you're more inclined toward fintech where you're just there are difficult business processes that you're trying to solve, right? So having a basic understanding of data structures is very important because depending upon the kind of problem that you're solving, the sort of data structure that you need to implement may change, right? For example, if you're building an application with which requires you to build a sort of first come first serve feature, which is, for example, if you want to build an application which helps us maintain, you take an appointment to a particular doctor, right? So therein the first come first serve principle applies. So the one who takes the appointment earlier gets a better slot or earlier slot. So given that being a use case, you can there are already data structures like queue or stacks that you can choose from, which will save a lot of time in terms of actually delivering the product, right? So having some knowledge about data structures help you make better design decisions in terms of what structure to use, what algorithms to use to for a given problem.
Great. So Ashish, I've got a couple of questions. So I'll just read them out to you, and you can tell what the answer to them would be. So Sai Kishore has a question. He says, I know HTML, CSS, Python. So should I actually go into the full stack development domain?
Yeah, definitely. I think if you know HTML, CSS, I think you should first of all start exploring Angular or any other framework that will complete your UX experience. And you know Python, which means you have experience with scripting and server-side coding. So you should also start uh, learning about databases and how to integrate databases with Python. Once you just work on these two aspects, I think you complete the whole stack and you will be able to work upon things. And I think the very important thing is don't limit yourselves by a particular technology. So it's great that you know Python, but if you know Python and if you're able to make applications using Python, nothing is stopping you to picking up any new language, right? Because it's merely syntax that would change, but you already know how to code things or how to program things to solve a particular problem. So definitely, yes. I think if you are already have experience in HTML, CSS, and Python, I think just get some experience with any UX framework and start working on any database technology with Python.
Great. Next question we have from Athar. So he's saying, so he has a couple of questions. I'll go one by one. First question that he's asking is, what's the difference between Firebase and Firestore?
Sure. So Firebase is something. It's basically sort of a NoSQL database, which is developed by Google. So you can quickly configure Firebase into your UX application, and it directly connects with Google services to store your data and retrieve it in a NoSQL fashion. So I was mentioning JSON as a format while saving databases, right? Data, right, in NoSQL. So Firebases actually use JSON to store database, and it provides that feature out of the box. So you can quickly plug into your web application to uh, have a NoSQL database.
Great. Okay. Next question we have from Vinayak. He's saying, as a full stack developer, do we need to think of security and scalability of application as well?
Definitely, definitely. I think security and scalability is something that you should always have in mind. Now, that's not something that you can learn from the day one, but the more you start working end to end, the more experience you get, you'll learn more about it. But definitely, I think that's the beauty of being a full stack developer is you know how the things are working right from the UX up till the database, right? So you can envision the whole thing start to end, which helps you make better design decision both in terms of security and scalability. So definitely, that's a yes.
Okay. Next question is from Ritesh. He's saying, what are your comments on Angular 2 Plus as a front end
Mhm.
and Node.js as as a backend combination?
Yeah, I think it's great. Angular 2 Plus is really good in term. I think Angular JS used to be really good, but there are a lot of things that Angular 2 solved for it. Angular 2 is more of has a component based architecture and a very feature-rich library. So you can definitely go with that. And Node.js. So a lot of fintechs company don't use Node.js as of now, but in terms of security. But I don't think like going ahead in the future, I think Node.js is really good in terms of building small applications and such.
Great. Next question is from Durgesh. She's saying, how much time will it take to be job ready? We can assume he's starting from zero.
I think for any given time, I think at least you should try and invest 3 to 4 months when if you are starting from scratch. But yeah, do see if do start working on the UX part. See if you how does it turn out for you. Like if you have like literally zero experiences, I would try for the first few months just focus upon the programming basics, and then just start developing small project and focus upon the actual thing that you're trying to deliver. Right? Don't just sit and spend a lot of time learning about entire HTML, right? That's not something that you want. Pick a use case that you want a form and a button. So just implement that much using HTML, style it, see how you can go ahead with it, right? So go use case by use case rather than going technology by technology. But yeah, I think
Great.
4 to 6 months is something that you would need. Yeah.
Great. Next question is from Ojasvi. So he says, which would be the best language for learning DSA, given that he's learning the full stack program?
DSA. I think if you want to learn DSA, I think start with Java or .NET or basically C Sharp, because these are more object-oriented, work on more object-oriented paradigms. So these are very feature-rich, and I think you would get enough resources as well to start off implementing these data structures. And all of these data structures are already available out of the box in all of these technologies that we talked about. So they have a very good feature-rich documentation available, which you can leverage to your advantage.
All right. Next question is from Kaushik. He's saying, how can I improve my UI design? That is the place I struggle the most.
Yeah, so I think it's important, a very important exercise that I recommend is just take a UI, for example, just take a calculator and try to build the same calculator, right? Try to just build the exact same thing. And when you do something like that, you would learn a lot of different ways to achieve things in CSS, and you will also, you'll also get a more experience in creating more visually pleasing assets, right? But what usually people do is they go to a site, learn CSS, and they just read about how to write classes and what is specificity and all of those concepts. But I think that's what I said, focus on small projects, take a small projects, take and open up any app, a calculator app or a to-do list app, and just try to mock up the same structure with the same style using HTML and CSS. I think that's a very good exercise to start with.
Great. Okay. So I'll be taking up a final question, and guys, rest of the questions I think we can pick up later. So we also have our business manager from Inchalabad who will be joining in, who will be explaining more about full stack and how you can get started with it. So I'm skipping some questions. I'm only sticking to technical questions, which Ashish can probably help us out with. Okay. So Ninu says, I know HTML, CSS, and JS. CSS framework. What should I study next?
I think the next thing is to actually start taking up small projects using any of the uh, front-end frameworks that we talked about, be it Angular, React, or Vue.js. I think that would give you a lot of experience in terms of sharpening your front-end skills. But and then for the backend and the databases, I think you can start with data structures, programming, and then slowly pick up a technology to try things out.
All right. Okay. So thank you, Ashish. I think we are done with most of the questions. Some questions left out, guys. Our business manager would be taking it up. So, Vaishali or Anushri, can we make Rahul the presenter, and I think he can go ahead and pitch.
Hi, Rahul. You're all set. Thanks,
Great.
Ashish. That was very knowledgeable. I also learned
Hello,
a whole lot of.
everyone. I hope my screen is visible and the camera is also working fine. Please confirm once. All right. Thank you so much, Ashish, for that great session. And I'll be taking the discussion forward. So before we begin, I just want to go ahead and establish what IntelliPart is, what is our role, and what we are doing in this industry and space. So IntelliPart started conducting training since 2011, and we started with Big Data Hadoop, and now we have ventured out into multiple courses in multiple domains. Now on our platform, you'll get more than 150 plus courses, and all these courses are relevant courses with relevant partnerships. Like recently we have started the training programs in partnership with IIT Guwahati, the and ICT Academy of IIT Guwahati for full stack web development, big data analytics. Digital marketing with SP Jan is also covered. Apart from that, we have certification partners like IBM, Microsoft, the EC Council, and most importantly, Future Skills. It's a Nasscom initiative. So this particular program or this webinar session that we are discussing, this is for web development. So on our platform, we are conducting the training for web developers, for aspiring developers who look to make their career in the web development field. If you are looking for the training, you are at the right place. Today, I'm going to show you the courses that are available and that you can follow along if you want to start your career. Now, the training that we are providing right now, it is available in the form of recorded lectures, which everyone who is part of the webinar can follow along at their own pace, and they can cover it from the basics. So the learning path has been designed as my trainer Ashish was telling you. It is designed to help you get started and make you work on real-time projects, use cases that will help you learn better, and you can understand why exactly you're learning a particular thing. And if you know that, it becomes easier for you to use it again and again. So if you're learning how to design a website, how the user experience should be like, it is basically designed in such a way so that you can ensure that whoever is coming to your website, they are spending time on your website. Retention is one of the most important things. So you have to be very clear about how the design looks like, what is the content that you're putting up, and how that is then the user is feeling when he is on the website. So if you are planning to start your career in this, if I go ahead and talk about the curriculum, we start from the basics. So first, a prerequisite is there. You should be aware of HTML. You should be aware of different hosting services through which you can host your website online. Now it can be via cloud, it can be via other hosting platforms. So we cover this training from that perspective. You get a basic knowledge of how an HTML website is created. You can host it on an internal server, Apache server. You can host it online. So we will be covering that, types of networks, everything. It will be shown, recorded videos will be available. Apart from that, my team will provide you support as well. 24 into 7 my technical support team is active, so that if you face any difficulties or doubts, you can reach back to us and we can help you out. The module 2 will cover in depth of HTML. So we will get into more semantics, more details of how HTML works, how the title works, what are the different kinds of inputs that you can have, the different images that you can put in, the sources that you can use, what are the different file transfer protocol applications that are there. So all of this, it will be a practical based training, as we discussed in the session. We want you to have the practical experience. So creating tags, also metadata, and all of this will help in when people search your website on Google, the data that you put up there, it is shown. So you want to have good meta tags so that it ranks on Google, and these all things help in ensuring that you have a proper website. Fundamentals of CSS. So CSS is cascading style sheets. This will help you in making your website look better to the user. So this will again be covered from the basics, integration of CSS with HTML, will be covered as a part of the training. Now, for all of this, we will have projects as well so that you can cover them, and then you can also understand how everything works together, the integration of everything. And that is how basically at the end of the training, you will have the confidence required to go ahead and attend an interview and crack an interview as well. So this entire training is designed to get you industry ready. If you're looking to start your career in web development, this is the learning path that you should go ahead and follow, regardless of how you are doing it, whether you're doing it as a part of our training or you're doing it yourself. This is the general learning path that you should also plan for yourself. Once you have the basics of HTML, CSS, you can delve into JavaScript. So JavaScript is very important. How static web pages, what is the difference between static and dynamic web pages, embedding JavaScript in HTML files, object-oriented programming. These are very important. So we will be covering these from the basics again, with projects, with real-time hands-on exercises, so that you can cover them at your pace. You can also work on them. You can understand what is the application of each of these technologies, or each of these functions that are available in JavaScript, like data types, variables, operators, loops. As my trainer rightly pointed out, for the different algorithms that are there, or the data like stack is there, or linked list is there. So what applications they have, in which scenarios or in which projects you can use them, which gives you the best benefit or in designing a good web application, it will be covered as a part of the classes. So you'll work on different kinds of projects, different kinds of case studies. The recorded videos will also cover real-time examples, so that you can get an idea of how different businesses are using the same thing. Once JavaScript is completed, we will start with database management. So, what kind of databases can be connected to a website? To give you a small example regarding this, now suppose this is the IntelliPart website, and today IntelliPart has this particular logo. Now IntelliPart has more than 150 plus courses, so there are 150 plus pages. Now, if one fine day IntelliPart decides to change their logo, that would mean that if it is a static website, then every page the developer has to go in and change the logo individually, then only the same logo will be reflected everywhere. But if you have a database and the logo file is stored on that database, and if this dynamic website loads and this photograph is actually pulled from a database, then it becomes very easy for the developer to just change that image on the database, and on all the IntelliPart pages that are there, automatically the updated logo will be presented. So these kind of things are very important, and we'll be covering this from the basics. Now for databases, we'll also cover NoSQL database and SQL database. For NoSQL, we'll be covering MongoDB, server-side programming, website programming like NodeJS installation from the basics. It is covered. Different HTTPS servers, how that is used for website development, application programming interface, APIs, REST APIs. These are things that you must have heard about, but again, it is something that you should know with hands-on experience. So we'll be covering that. Microservice architecture. Finally, in module 9, this is the exciting part. Over here, you'll be creating full stack applications like Netflix, deploying Netflix application on AWS server. So this will be the backend part that we'll be covering, and then the backend web development framework. So Express.js, which is part of the NodeJS curriculum, that will be covered, so that you can work with Express.js and its components. You can also route HTTP, routing in Express.js and the request methods, everything. Finally, querying data from databases. So how you can, fetch the data from your database, whether it is SQL or whether it is MongoDB, and hands-on exercises, so that you can finally, at the end of the training, deploy a full stack website on the cloud or onto your server website, whichever like online platform you're using, hosting service you're using, so that you can manage, you can see your website live and see how it is performing, and then you can do more changes, because web development nowadays, every web application needs to be updated with changes that are being done in the industry. So those recent changes, new features, new applications need to be added on. So this entire training is designed to help you start your career in this. So I hope I was able to provide you the complete clarity of the curriculum that we are following. Now this training, it comes with lifetime access and free upgradation. So apart from the 33 hours of learning materials that you'll be getting, and the support that you're getting, 76 hours of project materials that you're getting. You'll be getting 24/7 support. If you require any assistance, my team is available to help you out. And once you have completed everything, completed all the projects, exam will be conducted and the certification will be provided to you. So I'd like Vaishnavi to just Vaishali, sorry, to come and explain just a little about the certification that we are providing along with the partnership with Nasscom.
Thanks, Rahul. I think people on this call might be wondering what is Nasscom doing, in the digital skilling space. So, as you know, Nasscom is really the Sector Skill Council, and we are an association, and we represent IT and IT-enabled services. So, one of the key charter that we have is working with the industry to identify what kind of jobs and skills are needed by the industry. So we work with the industry, define job standards, and then work with industry content partners like Intellipath to identify which are those highly valued, high quality courses that Nasscom can endorse. So this is one of the programs. Intellipath is a valued partner that we have. And for this program, if you successfully complete this program, you not only get a co-branded participation certificate, which will have the FutureSkills logo and the Intellipath logo, but you can also earn an additional SSC certification. So when you do this course, I think you can rest assured that these are the skills that are most in demand by the industry, and the way the course is structured meets the requirement of both hands-on and theory. So that's what I think FutureSkills is working for, and we hope that you will find this entire experience. It will help you get jobs. It will help you improve your current career prospects in your existing jobs. So we wish you all the best, and we hope you keep learning and skilling yourself. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Vaishali, for the details about the certification. Now, a couple of things that I want to also inform here is this training that we have. It is available for registration. People who are looking to start their career, they can visit the website. They can also get in touch with my team online. My live chat team is active 24/7. So whatever questions you have related to the trainings, whether it is related to full stack web development or web developer or any other course for that matter, you can go ahead and you can get in touch with the team. You can share your concerns. You can share your contact number and email ID, and my team, my course consultant team, can get back to you and help you out. You can also reach out to one of my senior course consultants. His name is Aditya. This is the contact details which should be visible to you on your screen. If you want, you can send in an email. If you want, you can also take a note of this number. You can send him a WhatsApp and he can guide you with the details. If there are any concerns that you're having, those can be discussed. Yeah. I'll also go ahead and put this up in chat, Hemant, so that everyone can contact on the same. 1 second.
Yeah, wait, it's just
Right.
gone to the office.
So I think some people have asked some questions. So I'll just get to that in 1 second. Okay, so someone is asking about the cost of the training. So the complete course fee for the training, if you're able to see the screen, it's 8,550 on the website. The registration process is quite simple. You just have to add the course to your cart and proceed to checkout. And the total cost, including the taxes, it is around 10,089 rupees. And this is for the complete training program, and with the lifetime access, with the facility to support 24/7 technical support. All you have to do is connect with my team. Either you can open the chat window and you can post your email ID and number, and my team can get back to you and help you out, or you can directly reach back to us as well. For availing the support also, you can write an email to support@intellipath.com once you are registered, obviously, on our platform, so that from your registered email ID, so that my team can accordingly get back to you. And based on the level of your query, suppose if you have a doubt which requires a session with the trainer, then that can be arranged so that you can share your screen, you can provide remote access, and you can provide access to your mouse and keyboard, and my trainer from his end can take access and resolve whatever issues you are facing. And if you have an issue which can be resolved directly by like sharing with your video, we can go ahead and help you with that as well. So we are also putting down the link of the course in the chat so that you can go ahead and open the website, and you can also refer to the curriculum that was discussed here today. If you have any questions, be sure to post your question on the chat, and my team will be definitely happy to help you out with the details. With that, this brings us to the end of today's session. I hope you guys learned something from it, and you guys are clear about what web development is and what is the roadmap for going and making your career in full stack web development and web developer.
Thank you, Rahul. Thank you, Ashish. I think this was a very insightful session, and I'm sure people know where to reach out to you if they want more information. When we send the thank you email after this webinar, we'll also put the details of IntelliPath, the website link, so you can go and check it out. And we hope you all invest time in building your skills so that you can get all these hot in-demand roles available. So thank you very much, and appreciate all of you taking out this time. Thanks. And now we can end the session. Thank you so much.